Have you ever wondered why we sit facing this way? Chances are, most of us assume that sitting in church is a passive experience where we just sit and passively things happen around us or in front of us without realizing that there's actually something quite active in doing this, sitting this way. And it's because there's a liturgy to the body that we do all of our lives, every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's a way that we go about liturgy with our very lives. The positioning of our body matters. And in fact, when we do this isn't passive, this is active, because what we're doing is saying that which is in front of us matters, and we turn our back to everything else. Most people don't even think about how coming to church is turning your back on everything else. There's a defiance, actually, to church attendance that I think most of us miss. But Søren Kierkegaard was a philosopher from Denmark who wrote about that, and he said that church going is actually a very active rebellion and defiant type of behavior. And we actually have that same kind of defiance when we look at the Lord's Prayer, especially when we look at that curious line where it says, "Hallowed be thy name." Most of us, when we hear hallowed, we think of things that are hollow, things that are empty. And for sure, maybe for some people, God is a hollow thing, empty, not worthy of pointing our attention, having a liturgy that directs our lives and our very selves towards. So for some people, yeah, religion is hollow, God is hollow. But that's not the sense of hollow. Actually, hallowed is supposed to be holy, just like the word Halloween. Hallows Eve is where we really get the word Halloween from. It's a holy eve. In Greek, the word is hagios, which means it's something set apart, unique, special. The same thing with the Hebrew word kadosh. Kadosh means holy as well. And in fact, there's plenty of places in the Old Testament talk about God as kadosh, 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 and worthy of turning our back on everything else so that we can point our direction, our attention actively towards something that we say is holy. Now, it matters what we think matters. And if you think God matters, wonderful. If you don't think God matters, that will have consequences of a different sort. I really enjoy the works of this one theologian named Karl Barth, who says, if we won't bow to one God, we will spend our entire lives trying to bow to 1,000 others. I love that line. And so actually, coming to church and sitting in a particular direction is an active turning our back on 1,000 other gods that are all clamoring for our attention, our money, our time, our priorities. And in fact, those are all called idols. And everyone has things of ultimate concern to them. That's a phrase from Paul Tillich, that everyone has something that's of supreme importance to them. And that one thing is what we structure our whole lives around. Well, if you aren't learning how to set your face forward and say, "Hallowed be thy name," chances are your life is going to have 1,000 things clamoring to be of ultimate importance to you. 1,000 idols all asking you, no, demanding that you sacrifice things for them. How insane is it that there are thousands of gods all asking us to sacrifice parts of ourselves or parts of our own families? In fact, success can even be an idol, and it truly can be. And in fact, some of us sacrifice our own children by ignoring them, by not spending time with them, by not caring about them, because we actually sacrifice our children to the idol of success. People think that idolatry doesn't happen today. That's rubbish. Idolatry is everywhere. And so we all have to ask ourselves, what are the things that we think are holy? What are the things that we think are kadosh, that we think are hagios, the things that we think are worthy of directing the liturgy of our lives towards? Well, it can be hard to figure out what's an idol. Sometimes we don't even know the thousands of gods that we turn our backs to. But you know what? There is a really good rule of thumb. Anything that we irrationally or emotionally defend is probably an idol for us. And here's the thing. This is the most brilliant part, too. If we can't think critically about republicanism, it's probably an idol. If we can't think critically about democratic policies, that's probably an idol. If we can't think critically about what it means to be conservative or liberal, then it's probably already an idol. If we irrationally or emotionally defend something without cause, my goodness, it probably is one of those gods that is making a claim in our lives. Because the goal when we come to church is not to be Republican or Democratic. It's not to be conservative or liberal, inclusive or exclusive. Like, put down those things, because the goal is not to be either of those dichotomies, and just ask, what is it to be Christian? And that is a higher principle than any of those other ideologies or frameworks or the ways that we go about organizing our lives. And in fact, the cross always throws shade on the ways that we try to organize our lives if the cross isn't the thing that we organize our lives around. That is probably what it means to say, hallowed be thy name. Because every one of us, whether we're atheists or whether or not we call ourselves believers, all of us have a God. All of us have a thing of ultimate concern. All of us have idols. The Old Testament is fascinating in the fact that it assumes all of us are polytheists. It assumes that all of us have multiple gods. And that's why the first commandment is, you shall have no other gods before me. So I would love to invite you not to see the Lord's Prayer as like a rote thing that we just passively say. It should never be something that we just, good golly, just say without any passion or intensity. Try to be conscious of even the words, hallowed be your name, because there's something brilliant that happens in the Old Testament. Moses is walking around in the desert and he comes across a burning bush. And in this fascinating story, God speaks to him from the bush, which, by the way, that's a play, or that's a spin or reversal on Adam and Eve hiding in the bushes after the fall, and God's walking in the wilderness looking for them. This is the exact opposite. God's hiding in the bushes. And Adam's son, Moses, is walking in the wilderness. It's brilliant. But Moses has to do a double take, because the bush is holy to him. And anything that's legitimately holy does two things. Holy things fascinate us, while they also cause us to tremble. And anything that fascinates you without making you tremble, have some awe towards it, is probably an idol. It's not really holy. Or anything that causes you to tremble, but doesn't fascinate you, that doesn't draw you in, that thing's probably not really holy either. And I wish I could remember where it is. But there is someone that said that when they experience God, it's like God's tearing them apart and putting them back together at the same time. That's what the word cleave means. You can be cleaved in half or cleave two things together. The holy does that. So when we come to church, when we pray the Lord's Prayer, especially that line, hallowed be thy name, it's a way of saying, God, I recognize that you fascinate me while also causing me to tremble. I recognize that you cleave me. You cut me in half, yet you put me back together. And I recognize that you should be set apart. You are Kadosh, 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 Hagios, 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 and I've got to stop and recognize you are my ultimate concern and worthy of putting all of my life around, because hallowed is your name, not any of the 1,000 other gods behind me. So when we come back to church, when all of this is done, I urge you, plead you, ask you to remember that when you come to church, this is an active, defiant way of casting aside 1,000 idols and saying, hallowed is thy name. But in the meantime, since we can't be meeting in person, since we can't meet in this grand space that helps us direct our attention this way, think about the liturgy of your life and use this time to sacrifice and to smash the idols that you have before God has to do it for you. Because it's always more painful when God has to finally smash your idols for you than when you do it for yourself. So ask yourself, is the liturgy of my whole life, is everything that I call mine directed towards the one God or the thousands? Because we all need to learn how to pray with sincerity that singular line, hallowed be thy name.